I never thought a school spelling bee would turn into the moment that tore my family apart. One minute, I was sitting in a crowded elementary school auditorium, clapping with everyone else, my heart pounding with pride. The next minute, I was holding my crying 7-year-old daughter in my arms while my own sister stood there, shaking with rage, after doing the unthinkable. Even now, when I replay that day in my head, it feels unreal, like a story that belongs to someone else. But it happened to us, and it changed everything. My daughter Lily is small for her age, quiet, the kind of child who listens more than she talks. She loves books more than toys, and would rather stay home reading than run around outside. We never pushed her to be the best at anything. We just encouraged her to enjoy learning and be kind. When her teacher suggested she participate in the school spelling bee, Lily was nervous, but excited. She practiced every evening at the kitchen table, sounding out words slowly, smiling every time she got one right. To her, it wasn't about winning. It was about trying. My sister, on the other hand, has always been different. From the day her son Ethan was born, she called him gifted. Those were her exact words, over and over again. Gifted baby. Gifted toddler. Gifted child. She enrolled him in extra classes, posted his grades online, and made sure everyone knew how special he was. Family dinners often turned into long speeches about Ethan's talents and future. If someone praised another child, my sister would quickly redirect the attention back to her son. It was exhausting, but we learned to tolerate it for the sake of family peace. When we found out that Lily and Ethan would both be in the same spelling bee, I didn't think much of it. They were in the same grade, after all. My sister, though, was thrilled. She talked about how this competition would prove what she already knew. She even joked, half-joked, that Lily was brave for trying, considering who she was up against. I laughed it off, but something about her tone made me uncomfortable. The day of the spelling bee arrived, and the school gym was packed with parents holding phones, grandparents whispering prayers, and kids sitting in neat rows on the stage. Lily squeezed my hand before she went up, her palms sweaty. I told her the same thing I always did. Just do your best. I'm already proud of you. She nodded, took a deep breath, and joined the other kids. Round after round, students were eliminated. Some misspelled simple words and walked off the stage fighting tears. Others surprised everyone by spelling difficult words perfectly. Lily stayed calm, spelling each word slowly, carefully. Ethan was confident, almost smug, flashing smiles at the audience after every correct answer. My sister clapped the loudest every time he spoke, her voice rising above everyone else's. As the competition narrowed down to just a few kids, the tension in the room grew. Parents leaned forward in their seats. Teachers whispered to each other. When it finally came down to Lily and Ethan, I felt my heart racing. I looked over at my sister, expecting a playful grin, or maybe even a supportive nod. Instead, her jaw was clenched, her eyes fixed on the stage like this was a battle she had to win. The final word given to Ethan was difficult. He hesitated, asked for the definition, then tried anyway. When the buzzer sounded, signaling he was wrong, there was a collective gasp. A few seconds later, Lily was given her word. She spelled it perfectly. For a moment, the room was silent. Then applause exploded from every corner. Lily's eyes widened in shock. She looked toward me, like she wasn't sure this was real. The announcer declared Lily the winner, and I stood up, clapping with tears in my eyes. She smiled the biggest smile I had ever seen. That smile lasted only a few seconds. Before I could even reach the stage, I heard shouting. My sister was on her feet, pushing past other parents. People turned, confused, as she marched straight toward Lily. I remember thinking she was going to congratulate her, maybe even hug her. That thought vanished the second I saw her hand move. The sound was sharp, loud, and horrifying. Lily froze, then burst into tears. The gym fell silent again, this time in shock. My sister was yelling, saying things I could barely process, about cheating, about embarrassment, about how this wasn't supposed to happen. Teachers rushed forward. Parents stood up. Someone called for the principal. I grabbed Lily and pulled her into my arms, my hands shaking. Her face was red, her little body trembling against mine. I felt a mix of emotions I had never experienced before: fear, anger, disbelief, and a protective instinct so strong it made my head spin. This wasn't just a family argument. This was my child, heard in front of dozens of people, by someone who was supposed to love her. School staff separated my sister and escorted her away while trying to calm the room. Parents whispered. Some stared at us with sympathy, others with horror. Lily kept asking, through her tears, what she had done wrong. That question broke me more than anything else. That night, as I tucked Lily into bed, she asked if she was still a good girl. She asked if she should stop spelling words so she wouldn't make anyone mad again. I promised her she had done nothing wrong, but inside, I was furious. Furious at my sister. Furious at myself for ever ignoring the warning signs. Furious that my daughter now associated her achievement with fear. Over the next few days, my phone filled with messages. Some family members told me my sister was just emotional and didn't mean it. Others suggested we let it go for the sake of peace. My sister herself sent a long message, not apologizing, but explaining how stressed she was, how Ethan was devastated, how I should understand as a parent. Not once did she ask how Lily was doing. That was when I realized this was bigger than one moment of anger. It was about accountability. It was about teaching my child that what happened to her was not okay, no matter who did it. And it was about drawing a line that should have been drawn a long time ago. As I sat at my kitchen table late one night, Lily asleep in her room, staring at my phone and rereading those messages, a thought crossed my mind that scared me almost as much as it empowered me. I wondered what it would take for my sister to truly understand the damage she caused. I wondered what example I was setting for my daughter if I stayed silent. And I wondered if taking this to court was the only way left to protect my child and make sure this never happened again. That decision would change our lives forever, but what happened next and how my family reacted when I decided to sue my own sister is something no one was prepared for. The morning after I decided I couldn't ignore what happened, I woke up feeling like I was standing at the edge of something I didn't fully understand yet. Lily was quieter than usual, picking at her cereal, avoiding my eyes. Every time my phone buzzed, she flinched, like she expected another loud moment to come crashing into our calm. I realized then that the school incident hadn't stayed in the gym. It had followed us home and settled into our lives. I called the school to ask about the report they said they were filing. The principal spoke carefully, using words like incident, policy, and mandatory documentation. She assured me they took child safety seriously and that witnesses had given statements. Still, I could hear the hesitation in her voice, like she was bracing for trouble. My sister was well known in the community, always volunteering, always smiling for photos. I wondered how much that reputation would matter now. Lily didn't want to go back to school. She said kids stared at her, whispered, and asked questions she didn't know how to answer. Some told her she was lucky. Others told her she should say sorry to Ethan so things could go back to normal. Hearing that made my stomach twist. A 7-year-old shouldn't feel responsible for an adult's behavior. I emailed her teacher, asking for patience and space, and the response was kind, but non-committal. Everyone seemed to be waiting to see what would happen next. At the same time, my sister's version of the story was spreading through the family. An aunt called to say she heard Lily had provoked Ethan by celebrating too much. A cousin hinted that maybe Lily had helped during the spelling bee. Each call felt like a small cut. It was as if the truth didn't matter anymore. Only loyalty did. I started to see how deep the sibling rivalry really ran, how long people had been enabling it because it was easier than confronting it. I remembered growing up with my sister always competing, always needing to be first. If I got praise, she needed more. If I struggled, she had to prove she was stronger. I had hoped motherhood would soften her, but instead, it seemed to transfer that pressure onto Ethan. Now, that pressure had spilled over onto my child, and the cost was something I couldn't ignore. When my sister finally called, her voice was cold. She said we needed to handle this privately. She talked about family reputation, about how legal action would ruin relationships. She never mentioned Lily by name. She talked about Ethan's future, how this spelling bee loss had damaged his confidence. I asked her, quietly, if she understood why Lily was afraid. There was a long pause, then she said, "You're blowing this out of proportion." That was the moment I knew we were no longer having the same conversation. To her, this was an inconvenience. To me, it was a line crossed. I told her I needed time, and I hung up before my voice betrayed how shaken I was. A few days later, a letter arrived from the school district requesting a formal meeting. They wanted both parents present. The thought of sitting across from my sister in a conference room, with Lily's pain reduced to bullet points on a page, made my chest tighten. Still, I knew avoiding it wouldn't protect my child. I began writing everything down. Dates, words said, how Lily reacted. It felt strange, turning my family's mess into notes, but something told me I would need them. Late at night, after Lily fell asleep, I searched for information about child protection laws and school accountability. I didn't know what suing my sister would really mean, but I wanted to understand my options. The words legal action felt heavy, almost unreal. This wasn't about money. It was about drawing a boundary so clear it couldn't be ignored again. Still, the more I read, the more questions I had. How far would this go? And what would it cost us emotionally? Meanwhile, my sister posted a long message online about false accusations and being attacked for protecting her child. Friends commented with support. Some tagged me indirectly. Others sent screenshots. I chose not to respond, but every word felt like another attempt to rewrite what happened. Lily asked why Annie was mad at us. I told her adults sometimes make mistakes and don't know how to fix them. Even as I said it, I wondered if that was true. The school meeting was scheduled for the following week. In the days leading up to it, Lily started having trouble sleeping. She asked if she would have to see her aunt again. She asked if people would be angry with her forever. Each question made my resolve stronger and my heart heavier. I held her and promised I would keep her safe, even though I wasn't entirely sure how. Family gatherings were suddenly tense or canceled altogether. My parents tried to stay neutral, asking me to consider forgiveness without really asking my sister to take responsibility. They reminded me we were family, that mistakes happen. I wanted to scream that this wasn't a spilled drink or a harsh word. It was a child being hurt because an adult couldn't handle losing. As the day of the meeting approached, I felt the weight of everything pressing down on me. I knew whatever happened next would shape how Lily understood justice, self-worth, and safety. I also knew my sister wasn't done fighting. Not in her own way. She had already shown she was willing to deny, deflect, and attack to protect her image. On the night before the meeting, I sat alone in the living room, surrounded by silence. My notes were spread out on the table, my phone face down. I thought about the courtroom scenes I'd seen in movies and wondered how far the situation would really go. Would my sister finally face consequences? Or would this tear our family apart beyond repair? Upstairs, Lily slept with her spelling bee medal tucked under her pillow, like a secret reminder of her strength. I watched the staircase, listening to the quiet, knowing that once we walked into that meeting, there would be no turning back. And even then, the biggest questions, how my sister would respond, how the school would act, and whether justice would truly protect my child, were still waiting, unresolved, just ahead. The morning of the school meeting felt heavier than the others. Lily held my hand tighter than usual as we walked through the familiar front doors, her eyes scanning the hallway like she was expecting something bad to jump out at her. Posters about kindness and learning lined the walls, and the contrast made my chest ache. This was supposed to be a safe place. Now it felt like a courtroom before the trial even began. My sister arrived a few minutes late, dressed perfectly, her face calm in a way that felt rehearsed. Ethan walked beside her, staring at the floor. He looked smaller than I remembered, his shoulders slumped, like he was carrying a weight he didn't understand. For a brief second, I felt a flicker of sympathy for him. Then I looked at Lily and remembered why we were here. We sat across from each other at a long table. The principal and a school counselor joined us, folders neatly stacked in front of them. They spoke about procedures, about ensuring a supportive learning environment, about moving forward. Every word sounded careful, measured, almost sanitized. When it was my turn to speak, my voice shook despite my efforts. I described what happened, how Lily reacted, how she'd changed since that day. I didn't exaggerate. I didn't need to. My sister interrupted more than once. She said emotions were high. She said she never meant to cause harm. She said Ethan had been under immense pressure and that anyone would react badly in the moment. When the counselor gently reminded her that adults are responsible for controlling their reactions, my sister stiffened. I could see the anger simmering just beneath her calm exterior. Ethan was asked if he wanted to say anything. He shook his head, eyes still down. That silence spoke louder than any words. Lily squeezed my hand again, and I felt her nails press into my skin. The meeting ended with promises of follow-ups and continued conversations. No consequences were discussed. No apologies were offered. As we stood to leave, my sister leaned toward me and whispered that I was embarrassing the family. That single sentence echoed in my mind all the way home. Over the next few weeks, the situation grew more complicated. The school arranged separate schedules so Lily and Ethan wouldn't cross paths too often, but word had already spread. Other parents had opinions. Some avoided me. Others quietly told me they admired my strength. One mother admitted she'd seen my sister's behavior before, but never thought it would go that far. Each conversation added another layer to the mess, another reminder that this wasn't staying private no matter how much my sister wanted it to. Lily started seeing the school counselor, and while it helped, she still asked questions that broke my heart. She wanted to know why winning felt bad now. She asked if being smart made people angry. I reassured her every time, but I could see how the experience had planted doubt where confidence used to be. That was something I couldn't forgive easily. At the same time, my sister doubled down. She told relatives I was turning her into a villain. She claimed I was overreacting to get attention. A few family members stopped calling altogether. Holidays were approaching, and suddenly there were two sides forming, quietly, painfully. I hated that Lily was growing up watching adults choose comfort over truth. One evening, I received an email from a lawyer I had contacted weeks earlier, offering to discuss possible next steps. Just reading it made my heart race. Taking legal action against my own sister felt extreme, but so did pretending none of this mattered. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I sat with Lily as she did her homework, sounding out words the same careful way she always had. She stumbled once and looked up at me, worried. I smiled and told her mistakes were part of learning. I wondered if my sister had ever learned that lesson. Ethan crossed my mind more often than I expected. I thought about the pressure he must feel, living up to a label he never chose. I wondered what he'd been told about Lily about me. Part of me feared that this situation was shaping him too, teaching him that losing meant someone else had to pay. That thought scared me almost as much as the legal questions looming ahead. When my sister showed up unannounced one afternoon, I wasn't prepared. Lily was in her room, drawing quietly. My sister stood on the porch, arms crossed, eyes sharp. She said we needed to talk like adults. She accused me of poisoning Lily against her. I told her Lily was scared because of what happened, not because of anything I'd said. The conversation went in circles, never touching the heart of the issue. She left angry, warning me that if I took this further, she would fight back. That threat lingered long after the door closed. That night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed everything. The spelling bee, the slap, the meeting, the whispers. I thought about what justice really meant in this situation. Was it an apology? Accountability? A legal record that said this wasn't acceptable? I didn't have answers yet, but I knew doing nothing wasn't one of my options. Lily came downstairs early the next morning, medal in hand. She asked if she could still be proud of it. I told her yes, absolutely. She smiled just a little and put it back around her neck. Watching her, I felt a mix of fear and determination. The path ahead was unclear, filled with family conflict, legal uncertainty, and emotional fallout. But one thing was becoming painfully clear. This wasn't just about a spelling bee anymore. It was about standing up when it would be easier to stay quiet, and the real battle was only beginning. The closer I got to making a final decision, the heavier everything felt. It was like the air in our house had changed, thicker somehow. Lily noticed it too. She asked why I was always thinking, always quiet. I told her sometimes adults have hard choices to make. She nodded like she understood, but I could see she was still carrying her own questions, the kind kids don't always know how to say out loud. The lawyer and I finally spoke on the phone late one evening. I sat in my car in the driveway so Lily wouldn't overhear. The lawyer's voice was calm, steady, explaining options, timelines, and what a lawsuit could realistically look like. Words like accountability, documentation, and impact on the child came up again and again. Hearing it framed that way made my hands tremble. This wasn't about revenge. It was about protection. Still, the idea of officially suing my sister felt like stepping into a storm I couldn't see the end of. As if she sensed the shift, my sister became more aggressive. She sent messages warning me about what I was doing to the family. She reminded me of favors she'd done in the past, of holidays we'd shared, of how our parents would be devastated. Each message felt less like concern and more like pressure. When I didn't respond, she escalated, telling relatives I was unstable, that I was trying to destroy her son's future. The story kept changing, but in every version, she was the victim. At school, things weren't getting easier either. Lily's counselor mentioned that Ethan had been having emotional outbursts. There was talk of tension between students, whispered arguments on the playground. The school was trying to contain it, but it was clear the situation was affecting more than just our two kids. Knowing that made my chest tighten. I never wanted this to spill over, yet it already had. One afternoon, Lily came home quieter than usual. She said Ethan had cried in class when someone mentioned the spelling bee. She asked me if she should give him the medal, so he wouldn't be sad anymore. I knelt down in front of her and held her shoulders, fighting back tears. I told her kindness didn't mean giving up her own achievements. She listened, but I could tell she was still confused. No child should have to navigate emotions this complicated. The family tension reached a breaking point during a birthday dinner for one of our cousins. I almost didn't go, but I didn't want Lily to feel like we were hiding. The moment we walked in, conversation stalled. Some people smiled too quickly. Others avoided eye contact. My sister was there, laughing loudly, acting like nothing was wrong. When she saw us, her smile tightened. At one point, she stood up and made a speech about families sticking together, about forgiveness, about not letting small moments ruin lifelong bonds. It felt pointed, deliberate. I felt eyes on me from every direction. Lily squeezed my hand under the table. I didn't respond. I just sat there, breathing slowly, reminding myself why I was doing this. Later that night, my mother called, her voice tired. She asked me to reconsider. She said my sister was struggling, that Ethan wasn't sleeping, that everyone was suffering. I asked her if Lily's suffering counted too. There was a long silence. She didn't answer directly. That hurt more than I expected. Days turned into weeks, and the decision loomed closer. The lawyer sent paperwork for me to review. Seeing my sister's name typed out in formal language made it all feel real in a way it hadn't before. I didn't sign anything yet, but I kept the documents in a folder, hidden away like a secret I was still deciding whether to share with the world. Then something happened that shifted everything again. Lily's teacher called me into a private meeting. She said Lily had stopped raising her hand in class, even when she knew the answer. She said Lily seemed afraid of standing out. Hearing that felt like a punch to the chest. This wasn't just about one bad day anymore. This was about my daughter slowly shrinking herself to avoid conflict. That night, I sat on the edge of Lily's bed as she slept, watching her chest rise and fall. I thought about the kind of example I wanted to set. I thought about what she would learn if I stayed silent, if I chose comfort over courage. I also thought about what this could cost us, family ties, peace, maybe even my own sense of safety. The next morning, I received a message from my sister that made my hands go cold. She said if I went through with legal action, she would make sure everyone knew the truth. She said she had witnesses, proof, and stories that would turn people against me. It felt like a challenge, a warning, and a threat all wrapped into one. I realized then that she wasn't planning to reflect or apologize. She was preparing for war. At the same time, the school informed me they had finalized their internal report. They wanted to share the findings with both families. The meeting was scheduled for the following week. Just hearing that made my pulse race. I didn't know what the report would say, or who it would favor, or how my sister would react if it didn't go her way. Everything seemed to be converging at once. The legal decision, the school's findings, the family pressure. I felt like I was standing at the center of it all, holding Lily's hand, trying not to let the storm swallow us whole. The next steps would define everything, but the path forward was still hidden, tense, and fragile. As the days counted down to the school meeting, I finally reached for the folder and placed it on the kitchen table. Lily walked in, saw it, and asked if everything was okay. I told her we were going to stand up for ourselves. She smiled just a little and nodded. What neither of us knew yet was that the meeting ahead would push every conflict to the edge, and whatever happened next would make it impossible for any of us to go back to the way things were before. The night before the school shared their findings, I barely slept. Every sound in the house felt louder, every thought heavier. The folder sat on the kitchen counter, like it was watching me. Lily had gone to bed early, clutching her favorite book, asking me to read just one more page, even though her eyes were already closing. When I finally turned off the light, she asked if the meeting would make things better. I told her I hoped it would. Hope felt fragile, but it was all I had to give her. The next morning started quietly, too quietly. As I poured coffee, my phone buzzed with a notification that made my stomach drop. It was an email from the school district, not just the principal. The subject line mentioned additional concerns and external review. My hands shook as I opened it. They wanted to expand the meeting. Representatives from the district office would now be present. They also mentioned they had received a complaint from another parent. Another parent. I read the email 3 times, trying to understand what that meant. Who had complained and about what? My mind raced through possibilities, none of them good. When I called the number listed at the bottom, the woman who answered spoke politely but carefully. She said the details would be discussed at the meeting. I hung up feeling like the ground had shifted beneath me. By noon, rumors were already reaching me. A friend from school texted to ask if everything was okay, saying she'd heard something about an investigation. I didn't reply. I didn't know what to say. All I knew was that this situation was no longer contained between my sister and me. It was spreading, twisting into something bigger and harder to control. Then my sister called. Her tone was different this time, almost calm, almost satisfied. She said she knew about the expanded meeting. She said sometimes when people push too far, consequences follow. I asked her what she'd done. She laughed softly and said she was just protecting her child, the same way I claimed to be protecting mine. The comparison made my chest burn. Before I could respond, she told me to think carefully before ruining lives and ended the call. That was when fear truly set in. I called the lawyer immediately. As I explained what was happening, his voice grew more serious. He said it wasn't uncommon for conflicts like this to escalate when one party felt cornered. He told me to document everything, save every message, and not engage directly with my sister anymore. Then he said something that made my heart race even faster. He said false allegations were sometimes used as leverage. False allegations. I looked around my kitchen, at Lily's drawings on the fridge, her backpack by the door. The idea that anyone could question my ability to protect or care for my child made me feel sick. I hadn't even considered that angle before. This wasn't just about the spelling bee anymore. This was about my reputation, my parenting, and my daughter's sense of safety. That afternoon, Lily came home from school confused. She said 2 unfamiliar adults had been in the hallway, talking to the principal. She asked if she was in trouble. I hugged her tightly and told her no, absolutely not. Inside, panic surged. I wonder how much she was seeing, how much she was absorbing without saying it out loud. As the meeting drew closer, my sister's online behavior shifted again. She stopped posting vague messages and started sharing articles about parental alienation and false victim narratives. People commented with sympathy and support. Some tagged others, fueling conversations I couldn't see, but could feel. It was like watching a storm form on the horizon, knowing it was headed straight for us. The day of the meeting arrived faster than I expected. This time, the room was larger. There were more chairs, more folders, more serious faces. District officials introduced themselves. The atmosphere felt colder, more formal. My sister sat across from me again, her posture relaxed, her expression unreadable. Ethan sat beside her, fidgeting with his sleeves. Lily stayed close to me, her small hand wrapped tightly around mine. They began by summarizing the original incident, then mentioned the additional complaint. According to them, concerns had been raised about ongoing family conflict and its impact on the children involved. The words sounded neutral, but I could hear the implication. I felt heat rise in my face. My sister spoke next, describing a pattern of hostility, suggesting Lily had been encouraged to see Ethan as an enemy. She spoke smoothly, confidently, like she'd rehearsed every sentence. I wanted to stand up and shout that it wasn't true, that Lily only wanted to feel safe. Instead, I waited. When it was my turn, I shared what Lily's teacher had told me about her withdrawing in class. I described her fear of standing out, her questions about being proud of herself. I kept my voice steady, even when my throat tightened. I could feel eyes on me, weighing every word. Then came the surprise I hadn't prepared for. One of the district officials mentioned they had received screenshots of messages taken out of context, messages I'd sent to a close friend in frustration, now framed as evidence of hostility. I knew immediately where they'd come from. My sister had somehow gotten access to private conversations. The realization hit me like ice water. I looked at her, and for the first time, she didn't meet my eyes. The meeting ended without conclusions, just more promises of review and follow-up. As we left the building, Lily asked if we were in trouble now. I knelt down and looked her in the eyes, telling her we were going to be okay. I hoped that was true. That evening, the lawyer called again. He said the stakes had changed. He said we needed to be prepared for this to get messier before it got better. As I hung up, I realized my sister wasn't just trying to defend herself anymore. She was trying to shift the narrative completely, to turn the spotlight away from what she'd done, and onto me. And as I watched Lily quietly coloring at the table, I understood that whatever came next would push this story to a breaking point, one where the truth would either finally come out or be buried under something far darker. The final meeting happened on a rainy morning, the kind that makes everything feel heavier before you even step outside. I dressed Lily in her favorite sweater, the one that made her feel brave, and we walked into the district office together. This time, I wasn't shaking. I was tired, yes, but also clear. Whatever happened today, I knew I had done everything I could to protect my child. The room was silent as we took our seats. The district officials were already there, along with the school counselor and principal. My sister arrived last, confident as ever, but something about her expression felt different. Less certain. Ethan sat beside her, still quiet, still distant. I wondered what he'd been told, and whether he understood why all of this was happening. The lead administrator began by reviewing the investigation findings. She spoke slowly, carefully, outlining witness statements from teachers, parents, and staff who had been present at the spelling bee. She described the immediate aftermath, Lily's distress, and the school's response. My heart pounded as she moved on to the additional complaints and allegations that had surfaced afterward. Then she paused. She said that after reviewing all evidence, including messages, timelines, and interviews, it was clear that the original incident had been accurately reported. She stated plainly that my sister's actions were inappropriate and had caused emotional harm. She added that there was no evidence Lily had provoked anything, cheated, or been coached unfairly. I felt a rush of relief, so strong it made my eyes burn. The room stayed quiet as she continued. She addressed the screenshots my sister had submitted, explaining that when reviewed in full context, they showed a concerned parent venting privately, not manipulation or hostility. The implication my sister had tried to create didn't hold up. I glanced at her. Her face had gone pale. Then came the words I'd been holding my breath for. The district confirmed that the incident would be formally documented and that appropriate action would be taken to ensure Lily's safety and emotional well-being moving forward. Counseling support would continue, and clear boundaries would be enforced. It wasn't dramatic, but it was official. It mattered. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't say much. I talked about Lily, about how winning the spelling bee should have been a happy memory. I said this was never about punishment, only accountability. I said children learn from what adults model, and I wanted my daughter to learn that standing up for herself was not wrong. My voice wavered, but I didn't stop. My sister finally spoke. Her voice cracked as she tried to defend herself again, but the confidence was gone. She said she'd been overwhelmed, that she hadn't meant to hurt anyone. For the first time, she looked at Lily. She didn't apologize, not really, but there was something close to regret in her eyes. Or maybe it was fear of consequences she could no longer avoid. The meeting ended with final statements and next steps. As we walked out, Lily tugged on my sleeve and whispered, "Is it over?" I told her the hardest part was. That much was true. Outside, as the rain slowed to a drizzle, my sister approached me. She said we needed to talk privately. I hesitated, then agreed, asking Lily to wait nearby with a staff member. My sister looked smaller standing there, stripped of her audience. She told me she never expected things to go this far. I told her neither did I. I said what she did broke something, and that trust doesn't fix itself just because people want it to. She nodded, eyes glossy, and said she was sorry for losing control, for letting her pride take over. It wasn't perfect, but it was the closest thing to accountability I'd heard from her. For a moment, I thought that might be the end of it. Then came the final twist. Later that evening, my lawyer called. He told me that during the investigation, something unexpected had come to light. The additional parent complaint that triggered the district review hadn't come from my sister at all. It came from another parent, one who had witnessed the incident and had been disturbed by how quickly it was brushed aside. That parent had also shared concerns about patterns of behavior they'd observed before. The realization hit me hard. My sister hadn't been in control of the narrative as much as she thought. The truth had found its way out on its own. Because of that complaint and the documented findings, the district had also decided to refer the matter for further review outside the school system. Not to escalate punishment, but to ensure child safety standards were upheld. It meant my sister would have to face this beyond just family conversations and school meetings. When I told Lily that night that she wouldn't have to see her aunt for a while, she seemed relieved. She asked if she could bring her medal to school again. I smiled and told her yes. The next morning, she wore it proudly, her shoulders a little straighter than they'd been in weeks. The lawsuit I had prepared for never needed to be filed. The documentation, the investigation, and the truth had done what legal threats alone could not. Still, the damage to our family remained, fragile and unresolved. My sister and I were no longer speaking regularly. Some relatives were distant. Others quietly apologized for doubting me. But the biggest change was in Lily. She raised her hand in class again. She read aloud without fear. She asked if she could enter another spelling competition someday. Watching her confidence return, I knew every difficult moment had been worth it. The unexpected twist wasn't a dramatic courtroom scene or a public apology. It was realizing that standing up for my child had created ripples I never anticipated, ripples that exposed deeper truths, forced accountability, and reminded me that sometimes doing the right thing changes everything, even when it costs more than you're ready for. And as Lily placed her medal back on her shelf that night, she looked at me and said, "I'm still proud of myself." That was the real victory. Life didn't magically return to normal after that. In some ways, it became quieter, but in others, it felt like we were learning how to breathe again after holding our breath for too long. The days following the investigation moved slowly, like everyone involved was adjusting to a new reality. Lily went back to school with her head a little higher, still cautious, but no longer afraid of being seen. The school followed through on everything they promised. Lily continued meeting with a counselor, not because she was broken, but because she deserved a safe place to talk. Her teacher made a point to encourage her gently, never putting her on the spot, but always letting her know she mattered. Over time, the whispers faded. Kids moved on to new interests, new drama, new stories. Children are resilient that way. Adults, not always so much. Ethan transferred schools a few weeks later. That decision came quietly, without announcements or explanations. I heard about it through a mutual acquaintance, not from my sister herself. Part of me felt relief knowing Lily wouldn't have to see him every day. Another part felt sadness for a child who had been raised under impossible expectations. I hoped, wherever he landed, he would be allowed to just be a kid. My sister and I spoke only once more after that. It was a short conversation, awkward and careful. She said she was starting therapy, not because anyone forced her to, but because she didn't like what she'd seen in herself. I didn't forgive her that day, but I listened. Healing, I learned, doesn't always look like reconciliation. Sometimes it looks like distance, boundaries, and time. Our families slowly adjusted. Some relationships never fully recovered, but others grew stronger in unexpected ways. A cousin I hadn't been close to reached out and admitted she'd gone through something similar as a child. A neighbor told me she admired how I stood up for Lily. Those moments reminded me that even painful stories can help others feel less alone. At home, Lily began to laugh more. Real laughter, the kind that fills a room without effort. She taped her spelling bee certificate to the wall above her desk, right next to her drawings. One night, she asked if she could join another competition someday, maybe a reading contest or a science fair. I told her she could try anything she wanted. Her smile said everything. I learned a lot about myself through all of this too. I learned that protecting your child sometimes means being misunderstood. That family loyalty doesn't excuse harmful behavior. That standing up for what's right can be lonely, but it's also powerful. I learned that silence often protects the wrong people, and speaking up, even when your voice shakes, can change the course of things. The lawsuit I once thought was inevitable became unnecessary, but the intention behind it mattered. It showed Lily that I was willing to go as far as needed for her safety and dignity. It showed others that boundaries are real, even within families. And it showed me that courage isn't loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's just a parent showing up, again and again, when it would be easier to step back. Months later, on a calm afternoon, Lily came home from school holding a new book. She told me she'd volunteered to read aloud in class, and that it felt good. Not scary, just good. I hugged her, feeling a quiet pride settle in my chest. That moment meant more to me than any formal apology ever could. Looking back, the spelling bee feels like a small event with huge consequences. A simple school competition became a turning point that forced truths into the open. It exposed unhealthy patterns, tested family bonds, and reminded me how quickly joy can turn into pain when adults lose control. But it also showed me how strength can grow from the hardest moments. If there's one thing I hope people take away from our story, it's this. Children are always watching. They learn how to handle conflict, failure, and success by observing the adults around them. When we choose accountability over excuses and protection over pride, we give them something far more valuable than a trophy or a title. We give them permission to believe in themselves. Lily still loves words. She still practices spelling at the kitchen table, sounding them out slowly, carefully, just like before. But now, when she gets one right, she smiles without hesitation. No fear, no guilt, just pride. And every time I see that smile, I know we made the right choice.